Iowa Live.
From the Carl Chevrolet Studios in West Des Moines, welcome to Iowa Live. I am Lou, and it is time to learn something about the law with a topic that gets more discussion than a lot of other topics that we address here with attorney Kim Baer. Hello, Kim.
Good morning, Lou.
All right, let's talk about something that a lot of people have misconceptions about, and sometimes major misconceptions about. Non-compete clauses. First of all, what are we talking about?
Right. So typically when you start a job, or maybe you got a promotion or you become a manager.
Okay.
So your employer might come to you and say, hey, will you sign a non-compete? I want to make sure that if I'm going to share information with you, like client list or recipes or whatever the case may be, that you're not going to leave me and go work for a competitor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way we use a non-compete. Another way that we use a non-compete is if, for instance, I'm buying your business. I want to make sure you're not going to go down the street and compete with me.
Okay.
So we see it in businesses too.
So what is all involved in drafting up something like that?
Right. So first of all, a lot of people have the misconception that non-competes are not valid in Iowa, but they are, as long as they meet certain requirements.
Oh, because the biggest thing, and everybody can that talks about this, it's a right to work state, Kim,
yes,
right?
Yes, it's a right to work state. That's right. But the courts also recognize that an employer has an interest in their business, and they have a right to protect that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not favored in Iowa, but they will be enforced if they meet certain requirements.
Okay. Now, what is enforceable? What is considered enforceable?
Okay. So first of all, we need to have a reasonable geographic limit. So, for example, if your business is in Iowa, you can't say the entire United States. If your business is primarily in the Des Moines area, maybe it should be Des Moines area within 100 miles.
Okay.
If it's in various states, we can build things up like around that. So
if it's local, is 100 miles pretty typical?
100 miles is pretty typical. Okay. Sometimes people want more. It depends on if you've got some outlier customers, or if you're thinking you're going to expand. Then the other thing, so it needs to be then limited in time. Mm-hmm. It can't just be, for the rest of your life. You can't compete with my shoe company.
Okay, and so you said limited in time. What is a typical?
So typically we see 2 years, sometimes we see 1 year, depending on the trade secrets, it might be longer. If I'm buying your company, it might be 5-10 years, so it might be quite a bit longer.
Is that negotiable?
Yeah, it absolutely is negotiable. Usually an employee who's being hired doesn't really have a whole lot of negotiating power, unless for some reason, they're really courting you and they want you to come in, then you might be able to knock it down from 2 years to 1 year.
Okay.
Like that.
So what type of work are we talking about here when you go on, in case there's work restrictions here?
Right. So it can be really just about anything. So maybe you're my big salesperson and I don't want you to do anything with regard to my clients or my customer list. So it could be sales.
Okay.
It can be, we've seen it in restaurants with regard to recipes. There's a famous case involving the Tavern Pizza restaurant.
Yeah, that was the one we were talking about. Yeah, there's actually in Iowa. There's a couple of different pizza things that we're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. And so that's another factor. We want to make sure that the limitation applies actually with regard to your business. So, for instance, if you're in sales with me, I can't just say no sales jobs. I have to say no sales jobs in whatever my industry is, and I have to define it.
All right.
So, yes.
So you can't just say you can't sell anymore.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can't sell anymore. I mean, so it needs to be, what we're almost talking about is it needs to be narrowly defined. I mean, we need to define it so that it's fair. It's fair. It's protecting the business, but at the same time, it's fair to the employee. So the employee can still work. They just might need to go out of the geographical area, or maybe they need to go into a slightly different work area.
Okay, you have what else is on the list here of things that you need to think about?
Right. So another thing that, so let's say that I want, you've been working for me for a while, and I didn't have you sign a non-compete as part of the job offer. Mm-hmm. That's something that we need to talk about too. If you're going to sign a non-compete as the employee, there needs to be consideration between us. So the consideration would be, I'm offering you a job, you need to sign this. But let's say I didn't have a non-compete. I hired you. You've been working for me, and now I'm going to make you the manager, and I'm going to give you access to a lot of information. What I'm going to want to do as the employer is say to you, I'm going to give you this raise, I'm going to give you this promotion, and that's the consideration, but as part of that, you have to sign this non-compete. So otherwise, employers are going to have a real difficult time, because if there's no consideration, you're giving up something really for nothing. So we just need to make sure, I mean, so if you've been working for me for 3 years and all of a sudden I've got this new non-compete and I'm not giving you anything, that might be an issue.
Okay, so that is something that's really important.
Yeah, it's really important. Okay. The other thing, I just want to make sure that employers know that if you don't have a non-compete and you're worried that somebody's taking your client list or taking your secret recipe, Iowa does have a trade secrets statute, and that is something that we can look at as well.
Okay, and speaking of taking a look at, you can take a look at every situation. What's the best way for you to take a look at that?
Yeah, sure. Just get a hold of us. We're more than happy to help, and we can be reached at 515-279-2000.
Yeah, great information, and get your answers to the non-compete clauses, non-compete documents that are being signed in Iowa, and get the right answers.
That's right. We're happy to help.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. This is Iowa Live.